ever noticed the way a human child is drawn to other baby animals? A kitten, a puppy, a baby swallow in its nest. Or the way a human baby beholds another human baby, caresses its head, its hand, reaches out to embrace this fellow being. Or even the way a child will notice the smallest sapling in a forest of giants. In fact, the day I had written these words, my daughter came home from school, and the first thing she told me with excitement and wonder in her voice was that they had found a baby, a tiny, she said, maple tree. There is a natural affinity, an experience of communion between the human child and all the earth's children, plant or animal. The human child experiences a sense of connection from the beginning. She knows from her own experience, her DNA, her cells, that life is connection, is interdependence. And after she travels that long journey through the darkness into the light of life, she seeks it out. She may find connection as she drinks from her mother's breast, but she is also in for a surprise. For our human world, and our American culture in particular, do not value connection and interdependence. Quite the opposite, in fact. So her post-birth experience differs radically from all that she knows to be true, all that she has experienced, as she is isolated in a crib or baby seat for much of the day and night. And then when she can sit, graduates to one of those large, brightly colored plastic donuts where she half sits, half dangles, and can bounce to her heart's content, surrounded by artificial stimulants that glitter, honk, spin. And then to a stroller, where she sits facing outward, alone, just her against the world as it rushes at and past her. And so she has begun her education as a 21st century human, a journey that will likely take her through the halls of industrial education, where she will be reduced to a series of letters, numbers, and test scores, and where she will have little influence over the direction of her own learning, her own development. Ultimately, more likely than not, her education will lead to alienation, alienation from self, from community, from the natural world. As a teen and then 20-something, she may numb herself with alcohol, drugs, technology, sex, as she seeks happiness outside herself through the right clothes, the right music, the right gadgets, then the right cars, the right houses, the right neighborhoods, the right vacations, and ultimately through her own beautiful children. But fear not, as she ages and reflects and starts to feel the disconnect, she may avail herself of any number of therapies, retreats, so-called alternative practices, or mind-altering experiences, as she seeks to reconnect with that self, that original being born into this world and of this earth with a deep knowing that she belongs. There has got to be an easier way. While admittedly that's a pretty simplistic glance at 20th or 21st century human development, I would posit that for most Americans, it's not far from the truth. I know for me it wasn't. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, into a politically progressive, educated lower middle class family that went hiking and fossil hunting for vacation, never to Disneyland. And yet I grew up disconnected. I was an occasional visitor to nature, but not at home in nature. Many of my experiences with the natural world were framed the way most children's are. We went to the zoo, the aquarium, the circus, and to that depressing restaurant where dolphins performed while diners ate seafood. As a child, I stood apart from the natural world, a world that was available for a fee, and therefore my use, my enjoyment, my entertainment. My journey home to what my friend and mentor, the revolutionary artist and naturalist Esther James calls earth belonging at homeness, is one that I am still on. It's a journey that took me from the Midwest through 6 continents and 13 years in South Asia here to Whidbey Island. The path was neither direct nor obvious. And in fact, when I look back, I think it was actually quite circuitous. But it was and is essential. Essential not only for me, but also for my daughter and for the 7 generations that follow, when the epidemic alienation that plagues our times may be but a footnote of history. It is that dream of the future contained in every sunrise, in the sparkle of the stars at night, in the way the salmon will swim upstream for miles against all odds so that it may spawn. It is that dream of the future that not only sustains me, but compels me to create a different way of being in this world, a different kind of development, a different kind of learning. It's that dream of the future from which Calyx Community Arts School, the 347-acre classroom at South Whidbey State Park, emerges. I can remember the exact moment I knew I was done with the kind of work I had been doing as an international human rights lawyer. It was 2010, and I was working as the gender advisor to the UN Secretary General's panel on war crimes and crimes against humanity, committed during the final stages of Sri Lanka's civil war, a war I knew intimately after living in its midst for 13 years. In 2010, I was commuting each month between Whidbey Island and the UN Secretariat in New York. At that particular moment, I was at home on Whidbey Island. It was 2 a.m., the time as a single mother of a then 4-year-old that I tended to get some of my best and most sensitive work done. I remember I was looking at a confidential submission to the panel, video footage taken with a cell phone showing government soldiers committing war crimes against dead female combatants. It wasn't that I hadn't seen images like that before. For more than 2 decades, I had been working on issues of violence against women and human rights. I had traveled in and out of war zones, met victims and their families, documented horrible violations, confronted perpetrators, lost friends to violence, and my mentor to a suicide bomber. And yet that morning, I knew I was at or beyond my capacity for dealing with the darkest side of humanity. Perhaps it was the way the moon reflected over the water that night, illuminated the mountains across the way, cast its quiet glow across the water, and prepared for the coming of dawn. Or perhaps it was the beauty and wonder of the life unfolding as my daughter grew. I don't know what elements coalesced in that one moment, but I knew I was done. It was soon after that I started to voice my dream of starting an outdoor school for young children, a place where children and adults could spend their days together in a natural learning environment, where nature and the arts inspired not only child development, but our own human development, a shortcut back to that place we begin, that place of wholeness, that place of connection, that place called home, that place we all start as children of the earth, and that place from which we are led, misled, by a culture that gives us materialism in place of meaning, gives us consumerism in place of connection, and gives us destruction in place of development. The calyx of the flower is that part of a flowering plant that supports the flower as it blossoms. That's what we try to do at Calyx. As we wander the woods and explore the tidelands, listen to the trees. The natural world provides the context and meaning for all life. There can be no better teacher. The earth, the seasons, the elements are at the core of our learning. It's what we experience each day, along with stories and songs and games that enliven our experiences with the experiences of others, other people, other cultures. Art, creative practice, the imagination are our tools so that we can explore and we may reflect and ultimately create our own meaning in that place where the inner world meets the outer world. I would like to share with you a poem. We have a practice at Calyx of sit spots where children find a special place and spend time there alone, cultivating a practice of stillness and of awareness and connection. Sometimes we ask them to listen for messages from the forest. Last year, we wrote down the messages the children heard. And at the end of the year, I took their words, these were 7 children between the ages of 5 and 7, and I arranged them into a poem, The Earth's Child. This is an excerpt of that poem.
If you hear the woodpecker pecking, then you will know that you are the earth's child. The huckleberries and plants are your sisters and brothers. The salal and the forest are your own special family, and you are the earth's child. Trees are everywhere, and so are raindrops, making puddles that evaporate into the air. Trees are everywhere, and so are you, and you are the earth's child. Space. This space is very special to you. The animals are coming. We are waiting. My grandmother stump is singing, and I know that I am the earth's child.
My grandmother stump is singing, and I know that I am the earth's child. Thank you.